We got the Dolphins going up against the Bills on Saturday night. Who do you think is going to come out on top and why?
I got the Bills just because the Bills have been playing good the last few weeks. I know that they had a tough fought game against the Jets, but the Jets have a better defense than the Dolphins. And Tua's been faltering lately. Against the 49ers, he had 3 turnovers. Last week against, I was about to say San Diego, but I didn't. Against the Chargers, he just could not get it going from the field. It just completely looked inaccurate, out of sorts, out of rhythm. The pass rush was able to get to him. So, I mean, Tua just looks like he's unraveling at the seams after we gave him all the praise in the world as the season progressed and as the Dolphins kept being, I don't know, one of the better teams in the AFC. I mean, I would consider they were relatively solid at 8-3 because they're on a 2-game losing streak. At 8-3, I thought that they were going to be probably the AFC East favorite as Buffalo was just kind of waking back up. But it's been the complete opposite. They haven't been able to run the ball. The defense hasn't been able to stop anybody. Tua has looked off, and I mean, as an entire cohesive unit as a team, the Dolphins just look out of whack. I don't know if it was the 49er game that snapped them into this mindset, or it kind of like scared them into, oh shit, when we play good teams, this is what's going to happen. But they just do not look good at all. And on the Buffalo side, Josh Allen doesn't have to do too much. They're running the football a lot more, and their defense is finding ways to create turnovers despite not having Von Miller. So, I mean, the Buffalo Bills kind of woke up from their little slump a month ago, and they are realizing that they are one of the better teams in the AFC. They also have to understand that they have an MVP candidate in Josh Allen, but that coaching staff needs to also understand you can't put him in harm's way, whether that's lessening his touches running the football, whether that is focusing more, emphasizing on giving your running backs more carries. They need to understand that balance is successful, play action is successful, and that playing good defense, keeping the ball away from the other team is going to be the best formula to get victories in this league. In this case, got to get Tua rattled. In this case, you're going to have to limit what Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson are able to do on the ground. And then, I mean, you just have to attack that secondary. They have not been able to really stop much. I mean, Justin Herbert had himself a day. Brock Purdy had himself a day when he played in his freaking debut. So you really look at it like the last two quarterbacks. I mean, obviously apples and oranges between Purdy and Herbert, but they've both been able to pretty much carve up this defense. So I will say safely, I think Buffalo gets this win. It is in Buffalo, so Miami again has to travel back across the country. And I mean, it's gonna be pretty cold. I mean, I'm looking at this forecast. It's gonna be 32. Miami is used to 70 to 85-degree weather this time of year. So I mean, like, who knows if that throws them off? There's potential for it to snow. So we will see what happens. But overall, I got Buffalo winning down the stretch. I mean, it is hard to win in Buffalo in December and January as the season progresses. So I think that is going to be a huge favor to why I have Buffalo winning by the score of maybe, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe 31-24, something like that. 31-21, some random score like that. I think Buffalo gets a couple of field goals to make this an awkward score. But I do agree, or excuse me, I do believe that Buffalo comes out and becomes 11-3 at the end of this game.
I agree with you, Kev. The only thing I probably disagree is the score. I actually think it's going to be a smaller scoring total for both teams simply just because, like you outlined, it is potentially going to snow on Saturday. I think Buffalo's expected to get like somewhere around 2 to 4 inches of snow. I mean, temperature wise, it's not going to be frigid. It's not going to be like
No.
5 degrees, 6 degrees outside. So, there may be a potential for more passing in this game since it is going to be kind of like in the high 20s and low 30s. It's a lot better than single digits, I'll tell you that. But overall, I have too much faith in what the Bills have been doing recently. And when it comes to the Dolphins, Kev, they've been faltering. When I look at Tua over the last 2 weeks in particular, he's been flustered. And that's honestly kind of putting it in a mild manner here. There was a stretch in that Chargers game at one point last week. Kev, he was 4 of 18 with passing the ball against the Chargers at one point. Am I correct there?
Absolutely. While we were recording.
It was absolutely atrocious to look at that stat line and to see him playing that poorly, which is kind of weird because Tua, he was, as far as I saw it, the midseason MVP with how effective he had been in that quarterback spot for the Dolphins. And the Dolphins had been one of the more competitive teams in the AFC this year because of his stellar play. But he's gone up against, albeit some pretty solid defenses the last couple of weeks with the Chargers and the 49ers, and he's come up small. And going up against this Bills defense, I don't think it's going to get any easier. Look what the Bills defense just did to Mike White last week. I mean, if we're just looking at this from a football perspective, they got after Mike White and they damn near killed him. Matt Milano put on one of the most cleanest hits I've seen in quite some time, where Kev, he looked like a heat-seeking missile going after Mike White. If Tua takes one of those type of hits in this game from any player of that Bills defense, it is going to be a very long night for the Dolphins. And if the one thing that the Dolphins can maybe remedy the situation is, they got to protect Tua, because if that Bills defense is able to get effective pass rushes against Miami, it's going to be an uphill battle for Miami as far as I see it. And to kick it over to Buffalo, Buffalo has been on a pretty good stretch here the last couple of weeks. They did get a revenge game against the Jets this past weekend. They had that pretty embarrassing loss on the road to the Jets about a month ago. They were able to get that back last week, albeit there were some factors at play that kind of led to the one possession score. Mostly weather had to do with it. 35-mile-an-hour wind gusts. It was a little bit chilly in Buffalo, so you didn't see the offensive explosion that we're usually accustomed to with the Bills here. But when you look at them over the last couple of weeks, they've been very methodical offensively. They've been integrating more of the run game instead of just relying on Josh Allen to get the Bills to the promised land by him throwing 40, 45, potentially even 50 passes a game. And I think that's a working formula for Buffalo from here on out. It's getting colder out. We're in that middle stretch of December where weather is going to be a significant factor from here on out. And I think if the Bills want to be that tough, gritty Buffalo type team that we've kind of come them to know for like the last couple years or so, they're going to have to really rely on that run game, because I think it's going to be a pivotal factor for their success to potentially get to another AFC championship and maybe even a Super Bowl if they play their cards right. And in this game, I think the Bills are going to win this one relatively comfortably. I'm not going to say it's going to be a runaway game where the Bills win by 2 or 3 possessions. I do believe this will be a one possession game when it's all said and done. I do think that the Dolphins are going to be able to string along some drives, maybe put up 2, maybe 3 touchdowns in this game. That third touchdown might be a stretch. I'm not going to rule out that the Dolphins can't score against Buffalo, because when you got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, there's always the potential for Tua to blow the top off of the defense with Tyreek just running straight down the field and beating everybody in their secondary. And when you got Jalen Waddle as your number 2 receiver, it's a pretty good target to throw to. But I don't think that I don't think that the Dolphins are going to be able to get a lot of explosion plays here from the offense. I think at best they might score somewhere around 17 points when it's all said and done. I got the Bills putting around 24 points in this one. I just think that weather is going to play a factor, so I think that's going to have a much bigger impact than I originally expected before I even looked at the weather forecast. But overall, I think the Bills get this one. They win by one possession. And as far as I see it, Kev, they pretty much would round out the division with about 3 weeks left in the season. So if the Bills get this win, they pretty much lock up the AFC East as far as I see it. And that's how I see this Saturday night game between the Dolphins and the Bills playing out.